The queen who never was, until she became unstoppable. They called her nothing, a healer with no name, no status, no voice. While the kingdom celebrated their alpha king choosing a queen, Saren Vale stood in the shadows, pregnant, heartbroken, watching the man whose wolf had claimed her reject her in front of thousands. But she saw what no one else could. His eyes were empty. His wolf was caged. Someone had stolen his will. So she didn't beg, she didn't break. She vanished into the wild with a secret that would shake the kingdom to its core. This is her story. If you're ready to see a forgotten woman rise to power through blood, fire, and unbreakable love, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city. Let's begin. The chandeliers swayed like dying stars. Saren Vale pressed her spine against the cold stone pillar at the back of the grand hall, fingers digging into the granite as if it might anchor her to reality. Around her, hundreds of wolves in formal attire cheered, glasses raised high, voices echoing off vaulted ceilings older than memory. Torchlight danced across tapestries depicting victories she'd only read about in dusty library books. Wars won, treaties signed, bloodlines preserved. None of it mattered now. Because at the far end of the hall, standing on a dais carved from black obsidian, Alpha King Ryder Kane was choosing another woman. Not just any woman. Lady Vera Thorne, daughter of the Northern Coalition. Hair like spun platinum, skin like porcelain, smile sharp enough to cut glass. She wore a gown the color of fresh snow, threaded with silver that caught the light every time she moved. Perfect. Polished. Everything Saren would never be. Saren's hand drifted to her stomach, still flat, still hiding the truth that pulsed beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. "Let the bond be witnessed!" Lord Gavern's voice boomed across the hall. He was an older wolf, gray-muzzled and thick through the shoulders, serving as the king's chief advisor for longer than Saren had been alive. His ceremonial robes were heavy with embroidered gold thread. By blood, by moon, by the ancient covenant that binds us all, King Ryder Kane claims Lady Vera Thorne as his chosen queen. The crowd roared. Saren's knees buckled. She caught herself against the pillar, nails scraping stone. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. She watched as Ryder reached for Vera's hand. Those same hands that had traced Saren's collarbone in the dark 3 months ago, that had tangled in her hair while he whispered promises against her throat. His jaw was set, his expression unreadable. The deep green of his eyes, usually so fierce, so alive, looked flat, distant, like someone had painted over them with watercolor and left them to dry wrong. Something was broken in him. Saren had known the moment he'd walked into the hall tonight. The bond between them, still raw, still new, still secret, had flared hot and desperate in her chest. But when she'd reached for it, trying to find him through the invisible tether that connected their souls, she'd hit a wall, thick, impenetrable, like ice over deep water. His wolf wasn't there. Or worse, it was there, but caged, muzzled, silenced. "Your Majesty," Vera said, voice honey-sweet, and projected just loud enough for the first few rows to hear. She tilted her head, letting candlelight gleam off the diamond collar at her throat. "I accept this honor with all my heart." Liar. Saren's wolf snarled inside her chest, clawing at the bars of her control. She shoved it down hard, swallowing the growl that tried to escape. Not here, not now. She had no rank, no title, no right to stand on that dais. She was a healer, nameless. Barely tolerated in court because the king's mother had taken pity on her years ago and given her a position in the medical wing. No one knew about the nights in Ryder's private quarters, the way he'd pulled her into his arms after a council meeting went wrong, the way his wolf had surfaced and recognized her, really recognized her, not as a servant, but as something more. The way they'd spent hours tangled together, his forehead pressed to hers, breathing the same air while he told her things he'd never told anyone. "You're mine, Saren. I don't care what the council says. I don't care about politics or bloodlines or any of it. You're mine, and I'll make them see it." He'd said that 6 weeks ago. Now he was holding another woman's hand and smiling like Saren didn't exist. The ceremony continued. Gavin droned on about tradition and duty and the strength of the pack. Vera smiled wider. Rydor stood there like a statue carved from stone and regret. Seren's vision blurred. She turned and slipped through the crowd, moving carefully, keeping her head down. No one noticed. They never did. She was furniture, wallpaper, a shadow in a room full of chandeliers. The corridor outside the grand hall was mercifully empty. Her footsteps echoed too loud against marble floors as she walked. No, stumbled toward the east wing, toward the small room she shared with two other healers on the third floor. Her breathing came too fast. Her chest felt like it was caving in. Breathe, just breathe. She made it to the stairwell before her knees gave out. Seren sank onto the bottom step, pressing her palms over her face. The stone was cold beneath her. The air smelled like old wood and candle wax, and something faintly metallic she couldn't place. Her wolf whined, low and mournful, a sound that made her ribcage ache. He doesn't remember. Or he does, and he doesn't care. Neither option made sense. Rydor wasn't cruel, wasn't careless. He was intense and guarded and carried the weight of a fractured kingdom on his shoulders. But he wasn't this. He wouldn't have touched her, claimed her, whispered her name like a prayer, and then turned around and chosen someone else without a word. Unless he couldn't help it. Seren lifted her head slowly, staring at the far wall without really seeing it. What if someone had done something to him? The thought settled into her bones like frost. She'd heard rumors. Whispers in the medical wing about wolves losing themselves, about bonds being tampered with, about old magic surfacing in ugly ways. She'd dismissed it as gossip, fear-mongering, the kind of stories people told when they didn't understand how power worked. But what if it wasn't just stories? Footsteps. Seren's head snapped up. Two guards rounded the corner, young wolves barely past their first shift, wearing the king's crimson and black. They saw her and stopped. "You're not supposed to be here," the taller one said. His voice cracked halfway through. Nervous, Seren pushed to her feet, brushing dust off her plain gray dress. "I'm going back to my quarters. Grand Hall's the other direction." "I know." The shorter guard frowned. "You feeling all right? You look—" "I'm fine." She forced a thin smile. "Just needed air." They exchanged a glance. The taller one shrugged. "All right, get some rest. Big day tomorrow." "Right," Theron said softly. "Big day." She walked past them, spine straight, hands steady. Didn't look back. The moment she was out of sight, she ran. Her room was dark and smelled like lavender oil and old parchment. Seren shut the door and locked it, leaning her forehead against the wood while her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. Think. Focus. She crossed to the narrow window and pushed it open, letting night air spill in. The Capitol sprawled below, thousands of lights glittering like scattered stars, smoke rising from chimneys, the distant sound of music and laughter from the taverns near the market district. Somewhere out there, people were celebrating, toasting the new queen, planning festivals. Seren pressed a hand to her stomach again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. To the child, to herself, to the bond that still burned in her chest, even though it led nowhere. "I don't know what to do." Her wolf stirred. Not snarling now, just waiting, watching. Seren closed her eyes and reached for the bond again, carefully, the way she'd reach for a wounded animal, slow, steady, non-threatening. She found the thread of gold that connected her to Rydor and followed it into the dark, and hit the wall again. But this time she didn't pull back. She pressed closer, felt the texture of it. Cold, slick, wrong. It didn't feel like natural resistance. It felt built, intentional. Like someone had taken a chisel and carved a barrier straight through the bond, severing his wolf from hers. Magic. Not the clean kind. Not the kind taught in academies or blessed by moon rituals. This was old, bitter. The kind of magic that left scars. Serene's eyes flew open. Someone had poisoned him. Not with herbs or potions, those she could have detected, could have treated. This was deeper. They'd poisoned his mind, locked his wolf away and made him believe whatever they wanted him to believe. And if she was right, if someone powerful enough to do that was operating inside the court, then going to the council would be suicide. They'd dismiss her. Or worse, they'd silence her permanently. She had no proof, no allies, no leverage, just a secret growing in her belly, and a bond that refused to die. Seren turned from the window and started packing. Ochag. She didn't take much. A change of clothes, a leather satchel with medical supplies, bandages, salves, a few vials of tincture she'd made herself, the small iron knife her mother had given her before she died, 3 silver coins she'd been saving for winter boots. Everything else she left behind. It was past midnight when she slipped out through the servants' entrance near the kitchens. The guards were changing shifts. She knew the rotation by heart, had memorized it months ago out of habit, the same way she memorized which herbs grew where and how long it took different wounds to heal. The streets were quieter now, a few drunks stumbling home, a baker starting his ovens early, a pair of night shift guards walking their route on the far side of the square. Seren kept to the shadows and moved fast. By the time the sun rose, she was already miles outside the capital, following a narrow dirt road that cut through farmland and forest toward the frontier. Her feet ached, her dress was muddy at the hem, her hair had come loose from its braid and hung in tangled waves around her face. She didn't stop. Behind her, the bond pulled tight. Ryder's wolf was still caged, still silent, but hers howled. Loud and long and furious, a sound that echoed through her skull and made her teeth ache. "I'll come back," she promised. "When I'm strong enough. When I understand what they did to you, I'll come back and I'll fix this." But first, she had to survive, and she had to keep their child safe. 3 weeks later, Seren was chopping firewood behind a rundown cabin in a village so small it didn't have a name. The locals called it the Crossing because 2 trade routes intersected here, one heading north into the mountains, the other winding east toward the coast. It was the kind of place people passed through but didn't stay. A handful of houses, a general store, a blacksmith who doubled as the town's only dentist. No one asked questions. Seren had introduced herself as a widow, smiled politely, kept her head down. The cabin belonged to an old woman named Marta, who'd taken one look at Seren's hollow eyes and offered her the spare room in exchange for help around the house. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. Safe. The axe came down hard, splitting the log clean in half. Seren set up another piece and swung again. Her shoulders burned. Her palms were blistered. She didn't care. Physical pain was easier than the other kind. "You're going to hurt yourself," Marta called from the porch. She was ancient, white-haired, bent-backed, sharp as a blade. "Take a break. I'm fine." "You're pregnant and stubborn. Not the same thing." Seren froze mid-swing. Marta cackled. "Don't look so shocked, girl. I've had 6 kids. I know the signs." She hobbled down the steps, leaning heavily on her cane. "How far along?" 3 months, Seren admitted quietly. "And the father?" "Gone." Marta studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, none of my business. But you're going to need help when the time comes. Can't do it alone out here." "I'll manage." "Sure you will," Marta snorted. "Come inside. Made stew." Seren set down the axe and followed her in. The cabin was warm and smelled like onions and thyme. A fire crackled in the hearth. Marta ladled thick stew into 2 wooden bowls and set them on the table, lowering herself into a chair with a grunt. "Eat," she ordered. Seren obeyed. The stew was good, rich and hearty, the kind of meal that stuck to your ribs. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite. They ate in silence for a while. Then Marta said, "You running from someone?" Seren's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Not judging," Marta added. "Just asking." "Yes." "Dangerous?" "Very." Marta nodded slowly. "Then you'd better stay sharp. Frontier's not kind to women alone, especially ones carrying secrets." Seren met her eyes. "I can take care of myself." "I believe you." Marta smiled faintly. "But if trouble comes knocking, you holler. I may be old, but I've still got a shotgun and a mean streak." Despite everything, Seren almost smiled. The months blurred together. Seren worked, helped Marta with the house, traded healing skills for food and supplies, learned the rhythms of the crossing, who could be trusted, who couldn't, where to go if things went sideways. Her belly grew, slowly at first, then faster. By the 5th month, she couldn't hide it anymore. The villagers noticed but didn't comment. Marta ran interference when travelers got too curious. And through it all, the bond burned. It never faded, never weakened. If anything, it got stronger. Some nights, Seren woke gasping, clutching her chest as waves of emotion crashed through her. Rage, desperation, hunger. Not her feelings. His. Ryder's wolf was waking up, and he was looking for her. The rumors started in the 6th month. A peddler came through the crossing with news from the capital. The king had gone mad, tore apart his own council chamber, rejected his new queen, launched a manhunt for a woman no one could name. Seren listened from the corner of the general store, heart pounding. "They say he's obsessed," the peddler continued, voice low and conspiratorial. "Won't eat, won't sleep. Just keeps saying she's out there somewhere and he has to find her before they do." "Before who does?" someone asked. The peddler shrugged. "Didn't say, but there's soldiers everywhere now. Checkpoints on every road. They're looking for someone." Seren left before anyone could notice her hands shaking. That night, she barely slept. Because if Rydor had broken free, if his wolf had clawed its way past whatever cage they'd built, then the people who'd done it to him would be desperate, cornered, and cornered wolves were the most dangerous kind. She was 7 months pregnant when the first scout appeared. Look, it was early morning. Mist still clung to the ground. Seren was drawing water from the well behind the cabin when her wolf suddenly went rigid. Danger. She dropped the bucket and spun. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark traveling clothes that didn't quite hide the sword at his hip. His eyes were pale gray, wolf eyes, even in human form. "Seren Vale," he said. Not a question. Her hand went to the knife at her belt. "Who's asking?" "Commander Tyvan Rourke, King's Guard." He held up both hands, showing empty palms. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" "Because the king is tearing the kingdom apart looking for you." Tyvan took a slow step forward. "And because the people who poisoned him are going to find you first if you don't come with me." Seren's heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." His voice was quiet, steady. "You knew something was wrong the night he chose Vera. You saw it in his eyes. That's why you ran." "How do you—" "Because I saw it too." Tyvan's jaw tightened. "I've served Rydor for 8 years. I know when he's being controlled, and I know Lady Vera's family has been dealing in blood magic long enough to pull it off." Blood magic. The words hung in the cold air like a curse. Seren's hand tightened on the knife. "Why should I trust you?" "Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead." Tyvan's gaze flicked to her stomach. "And because whatever's growing in you is the only thing keeping Ryder sane right now. The bond's pulling him toward you so hard he can barely function. If they kill you, they kill him. Game over." Seren's breath caught. "War's coming," Tyvan continued. "The Northern Coalition's been planning this for years. They needed Rydor under control long enough to weaken his alliances, scatter his forces. Now that he's broken free, they're moving fast. And you," he pointed at her, "are the loose thread they can't afford to leave hanging. So what do you want from me? Come back. Let the king see you're alive. Let him finish what they started." "And if I say no?" Tyvan's expression didn't change. "Then I'll do my best to protect you when the assassins show up. But I'm one man, and they're sending a lot more than that." Seren stared at him. Every instinct screamed trap. But the bond in her chest pulled tight and desperate, confirming what he'd said. Rydor was awake, aware, and hunting. "How long do I have?" she asked quietly. "A week, maybe less." "Then I need 3 days." Tyvan frowned. "For what?" "To get ready." Seren straightened, lifting her chin. "If I'm walking back into that nightmare, I'm doing it on my terms." But for the first time, Tyvan smiled. Faint, but real. "Fair enough," he said. 3 days. Then we move." He turned and disappeared into the mist. Seren stood there for a long moment, hand still on her knife, heart still racing. Then she went inside and started making plans. Because if war was coming, if assassins and traitors and blood mages were circling, then she wasn't going to wait around to be rescued. She was going to fight back. And when Ryder finally found her, he was going to see exactly what kind of woman he'd bonded himself to. Not a victim, not a pawn, a queen. The 3 days passed like water through a sieve. Seren spent the first day gathering everything she'd need: herbs that could stop bleeding, roots that dulled pain, a mix of valerian and chamomile strong enough to knock someone unconscious if she needed to disappear fast. She worked in Marta's kitchen with the door locked, grinding ingredients with mortar and pestle, her hands moving on instinct while her mind raced ahead to all the ways this could go wrong. Marta watched from her chair by the fire, saying nothing, just rocking slowly, the creak of wood on wood keeping time with Saren's breathing. "You're leaving," the old woman said finally. Saren didn't look up. "Yes." "When?" "2 days." Marta was quiet for a moment, then, "The man who came, he's one of the good ones?" "I think so." "You trust him?" Saren's hand stilled. She stared down at the crushed leaves in the bowl. "I don't have a choice." "There's always a choice, girl." Marta leaned forward, firelight casting deep shadows across her lined face. "You could stay here. Raise the baby quiet. Let the world burn itself out without you." "And what happens when the fire reaches us?" Marta smiled sadly. "Fair point." Saren went back to work. The second day Tyven returned, but he wasn't alone. Saren was outside hanging laundry when she felt them approach. 3 wolves, all warriors. She could tell by the way they moved, silent, efficient, like predators who knew exactly how dangerous they were. Tyven stepped into the clearing first, hands visible, expression calm. "Reinforcements," he said simply. "This is Kyle and Jory, twin brothers, best trackers in the guard." The twins looked identical, compact builds, dark hair cropped short, scars marking their knuckles and forearms. One of them nodded at Saren, the other just stared. "And this," Tyven continued, gesturing to the woman beside him, "is Lieutenant Asheen Hale. She'll be handling logistics." Asheen was tall and lean, with copper-red hair pulled back in a severe braid and eyes the color of storm clouds. She looked Saren up and down once, taking in the swollen belly, the worn dress, the dirt under her fingernails. "You look like hell," Asheni said bluntly. Saren almost laughed. "Thanks. How far along?" 7 months. "Can you ride?" "If I have to." Asheni glanced at Tyven. "This is insane." "I know." "She's a liability." "I know that too." "Then why?" "Because the king will burn the kingdom to ash looking for her," Tyven said quietly. "And because if we don't get her back alive, the people who want her dead win. Simple as that." Ashini's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. KL, or maybe Jory, Saren couldn't tell yet, stepped forward. "We scouted the perimeter, found tracks heading east. 3 riders moving fast. They'll be here by tomorrow night." Saren's stomach dropped. "Assassins?" "Probably." The twin shrugged. "Could be mercenaries. Could be coalition soldiers pretending to be merchants. Either way, they're not friendly." "Then we leave now," Saren said. "No." Tyven shook his head. "We leave at dawn. Gives us time to set traps, cover our exit. If we run now, we're just targets on an open road." "And if they get here before dawn?" Tyven's expression didn't change. "Then we kill them." The words hung in the air like a blade. Saren looked at each of them in turn. Warriors. Killers. People who'd chosen to risk their lives for a pregnant woman they didn't know because their king had ordered it, or because they still believed in something worth protecting. She wasn't sure which. "All right," she said. "What do you need me to do?" Ashini's eyebrows rose slightly, like she'd expected Saren to panic, to cry, to beg for protection. Instead, Saren just waited. "Stay inside," Tyven said. "Stay quiet. Let us handle the rest." "I can fight." "You're 7 months pregnant." "I'm also a wolf," Saren shot back. "And I've been taking care of myself just fine for months. Don't treat me like glass." Tyven studied her. Then slowly, he smiled. "Fair enough. But if things go bad, you run. Understood?" Saren nodded. "Good. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be rough." They moved through the clearing like smoke, setting snares, rigging tripwires, marking escape routes. Saren watched from the window, memorizing their positions, noting the way they communicated without speaking. Hand signals, head tilts, the kind of language you only learned after years of fighting beside the same people. Marta appeared at her elbow. "You sure about this?" "No," Saren admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." The old woman chuckled. Stubborn. Just like your mother, I'd bet. Seren's throat tightened. She didn't talk about her mother. Couldn't. The wound was still too fresh, even after all these years. Marta squeezed her shoulder once, then shuffled back to her chair. That night, Serene barely slept. She lay in the narrow bed, one hand on her belly, feeling the baby shift and turn. It was strong, active, already fighting to exist in a world that didn't want it. Like mother, like child, she thought grimly. The bond pulsed in her chest, stronger tonight, like Ryder's wolf could sense the danger closing in. She wondered if he was awake right now, if he was pacing his chambers, clawing at the walls, screaming her name into the dark. She hoped he was, because if he'd forgotten her again, if the magic had reasserted itself somehow. No, she couldn't think like that. Seren closed her eyes and reached for the bond. Slowly, carefully. The golden thread hummed under her touch, vibrating with raw emotion, anger, desperation, need. She sent a single thought down the line. I'm still here, and somewhere, hundreds of miles away, she felt him roar. Dawn came cold and gray. Serene woke to the sound of low voices outside. Tyvin giving orders, Asheen checking weapons, the twins moving through their final sweep. She dressed quickly, pulling on her sturdiest clothes, lacing her boots tight. The iron knife went into her belt. A small vial of sedative went into her pocket, just in case. Marta was already up, stirring a pot of porridge over the fire. She ladled some into a bowl and handed it to Seren without a word. Thank you, Seren said quietly. For everything. Marta waved a hand. Don't get sentimental on me now, girl. You'll make me cry and I hate crying. Despite everything, Seren smiled. She was halfway through the porridge when Kyle burst through the door. They're here, he said. 4 of them. Coming from the south. Tyvin appeared behind him, already armed. How far? Half a mile. Moving fast. Positions. Tyvin's voice was calm, controlled. Asheen, take the west side. Jory, east. Kyle, you're with me. Seren. I know, Seren said, setting down the bowl. Stay inside. Actually, Tyvin said, I need you on the roof. Seren blinked. What? You said you can fight. Prove it. He tossed her a crossbow, small, compact, easy to handle. You don't have to kill anyone. Just slow them down if they get past us. Seren caught the weapon, testing its weight. It was lighter than she expected, well balanced. And if they don't get past you? Tyvin's smile was sharp. Then you get to keep breathing. He turned and disappeared outside. Seren looked at Marta. The old woman just nodded toward the ladder in the corner. Go on, I'll be fine. Seren climbed. The roof was slanted and slick with morning dew. She crouched low, pressing her spine against the chimney, crossbow resting across her knees. From here, she had a clear view of the clearing, the well, the woodpile, the narrow path leading south through the trees. The twins were invisible. Tyvin was a shadow near the tree line. Asheen had vanished completely. And then the assassins arrived. They didn't announce themselves, didn't shout or threaten. They just appeared. 4 figures on horseback, dressed in dark leathers, faces hidden behind cloth wraps. Professional. Efficient. The lead rider reined in at the edge of the clearing. Seren Vale, he called out. His voice was rough, scarred. We know you're here. Come out, and we'll make this quick. Silence. We're not with the king, the man continued. We're not here to drag you back. We're here to tie up loose ends. That's all. Still nothing. The rider sighed. Suit yourself. He made a gesture. The other 3 dismounted, drawing weapons, swords, daggers. One carried a short spear. They spread out, moving toward the cabin in a loose formation. Tyvin stepped out of the trees. That's far enough, he said. The assassins froze. The lead rider turned his horse slowly, eyes narrowing behind the mask. Commander Rourke, didn't expect to see you here. Funny, Tyvin said. I didn't expect to see coalition mercenaries this far south. Guess we're both full of surprises. We're not... Save it! Tyvin's hand rested on his sword hilt. I know who sent you, and I know what you're here for. So let's skip the part where you pretend this is anything other than an execution. The rider was quiet for a moment, then he laughed, low and bitter. You're outnumbered, Commander. 4 against 1. Walk away. 4 against 5, Ashini said, stepping out from behind the cabin. 4 against 6, one of the twins added from the left. 4 against 7, the other twin echoed from the right. The assassins shifted, suddenly uncertain. Tyven smiled. Still want to do this the hard way? The lead rider's hand moved. Everything exploded into motion. Seren didn't see who struck first. 1 second, they were all standing there. The next, steel was flashing, bodies colliding, wolves snarling as they shifted mid-fight. Tyven moved like water, fast, fluid, impossible to pin down. His sword cut through one assassin's guard and buried itself in the man's shoulder. The assassin screamed and dropped. Ashine was faster. She didn't bother with weapons, just shifted halfway, claws extending, jaw elongating, and tore into the nearest target with brutal efficiency. The twins fought as a unit, one high, one low, perfectly synchronized. The assassin with the spear tried to take them both, and ended up skewered on his own weapon. That left the leader. He dismounted and shifted fully, a massive gray wolf with yellow eyes and foam flecking his jaws. He charged straight at Tyven, going for the throat. Tyven sidestepped and brought his sword down hard. The wolf twisted midair, avoided the blade, and crashed into the woodpile. Logs scattered. He scrambled upright, snarling. And that's when Seren saw the second group. They came from the north, 3 more riders, moving fast, weapons already drawn. Reinforcements, or maybe a second team coordinating the attack. Either way, they were headed straight for the cabin, straight for Marta. Seren didn't think. She just raised the crossbow, aimed, and fired. The bolt caught the lead rider in the thigh. He jerked sideways, nearly fell, managed to stay mounted. His companions scattered, searching for the shooter. Seren loaded another bolt. "Up there!" one of them shouted, pointing at the roof. They changed direction. Seren fired again, missed, swore under her breath and reloaded, fingers clumsy, heartbeat thundering in her ears. The riders were closing in. 50 yards. 40. She aimed, breathed, fired. This time, the bolt hit true, straight through the second rider's shoulder. He screamed and toppled off his horse. The third rider didn't slow down. He spurred his mount forward, sword raised, eyes locked on Seren like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. 30 yards. 20. Seren fumbled with the crossbow. The mechanism jammed. She cursed and yanked at it, but the bolt wouldn't seat properly. 15 yards. The rider grinned behind his mask. And then a black wolf the size of a bear slammed into him from the side. The impact was catastrophic. Horse and rider went down in a tangle of limbs and screaming. The wolf landed on top of them, jaws snapping, claws ripping. Seren's breath caught. She knew that wolf. Even from a distance, even covered in blood and fury, she knew him. Rydor. He tore through the assassin like paper, then turned toward the second group, the one still fighting Tyven and the others. His eyes blazed green fire. His growl was loud enough to shake the ground. The gray wolf, the leader, took one look at him and bolted. Rydor didn't chase. He just stood there, chest heaving, muzzle stained red, staring at the cabin. At her. Seren's hands shook. The crossbow slipped from her fingers and clattered down the roof. She barely noticed, because the bond between them was screaming, not with pain, not with anger, with recognition, relief, a kind of desperate, violent joy that made her knees weak and her eyes burn. He'd found her. Tyven shifted back to human form, breathing hard, blood dripping from a gash on his arm. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. "You're early." Ryder didn't respond. He just padded forward, movements slow and deliberate, until he was standing directly below the cabin roof. Then he shifted. The transformation was seamless. "One moment, Wolf." The next man, tall, broad-shouldered, naked and utterly unconcerned about it. His hair was longer than Seren remembered, tangled and dark. His face was leaner, sharper, like he hadn't been eating, but his eyes were the same, fierce, alive. Hers. "Get down here," he said. His voice was rough. Wrecked. Seren didn't move. Couldn't. "Seren?" He said her name like a prayer and a curse all at once. "Please." She swallowed hard and climbed down. Her feet hit the ground. She turned. And Rydor was right there. Close enough to touch. Close enough to feel the heat of him radiating through the cold morning air. He stared at her. at her face, her hands, her belly. Then he dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't. I know." Serene's voice cracked. "I know." His hands hovered near her stomach, trembling, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he touched her. "Is it yours?" "Yes." The sound he made wasn't quite human. He pressed his forehead to her belly, shoulders shaking, and Serene felt the bond between them finally settle into place. No walls, no barriers, just the two of them, tangled together, incomplete and broken and still standing. Asheen cleared her throat. "Hate to interrupt, but we need to move. Those were scouts. There'll be more." Rydor stood slowly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked at Tyvin. "How many?" "Unknown, but the coalition's been mobilizing for weeks. If they know she's here..." "They know," Rydor said flatly. "They've known since I broke free. That's why they're moving now." He turned back to Serene. "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Then we leave. Now." He glanced at the cabin. "Anyone else inside?" "Just Marta," Serene said. "She's..." The door opened. Marta stepped out, shotgun in hand, looking entirely unbothered by the carnage in her front yard. "You the king?" she asked Ryder. "Yes, ma'am." "You the one who got my girl pregnant and then left her to fend for herself?" Ryder's jaw tightened. "It wasn't..." "Don't care about excuses." Marta leveled the shotgun at him. "You planning to fix it?" "Yes." "Good." She lowered the weapon. "Then get her out of here before more of those bastards show up. And don't you dare let anything happen to her." Ryder nodded once. "You have my word." Marta looked at Serene. "You be careful, girl." Serene crossed to her and hugged her tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Go on now." Marta pushed her away gently. "Before I change my mind and keep you here." They moved fast. Asheen brought horses, 6 of them, already saddled and loaded with supplies. Rydor helped Serene mount, his hands steadying her even though his whole body was still vibrating with leftover adrenaline. "I can manage," she said. "I know. Let me help anyway." She didn't argue. They rode north. The crossing disappeared behind them, swallowed by trees and morning mist. Serene looked back once, saw Marta standing on the porch, shotgun still in hand, watching them go. Then the forest closed in, and she was gone. They didn't stop for hours. The terrain grew rougher as they climbed into the foothills, rocky ground, narrow trails, dense undergrowth that snagged at the horses' legs. Tyvin led, with Asheen and the twins flanking them on either side. Ryder stayed close to Serene, close enough that their legs brushed when the path narrowed. He hadn't spoken since they left. Just kept glancing at her, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he looked away. Finally, Serene couldn't take it anymore. "Stop staring." "Can't help it." "Try." He almost smiled. "I thought you were dead." "I'm not." "I can see that." "Then stop acting like I'm a ghost." Ryder's expression sobered. "When I woke up, when the spell finally broke, I remembered everything, every word, every touch, every promise I made to you." His voice dropped. "And then I remembered what I did, choosing her, humiliating you in front of the entire court. I would have understood if you never wanted to see me again." Serene's throat tightened. "I didn't run because I was angry." "Then why?" "Because I knew if I stayed, they'd kill me. Or worse, they'd use me to control you again." She met his eyes. "I ran to keep you safe." Ryder looked like she'd punched him. "You were pregnant and alone, and you were trying to protect me." "Someone had to." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're insane." "Probably." This time he really did smile. Small, fragile, but real. They made camp at dusk in a narrow canyon sheltered by rock walls and twisted pines. Asheen and the twins set up a perimeter. Tyvin started a fire. Rydor stayed with Serene, helping her dismount, making sure she had water and food and a clean place to sit. "You don't have to hover," she said. "Yes, I do. I'm fine." "You're 7 months pregnant and just fought off assassins. You're not fine." Serene sighed. "Fair point." They sat together near the fire, Close but not touching, the silence between them felt heavy, weighted with months of absence and words they hadn't said. Finally, Rydor spoke. "What's the plan?" Tyven glanced up from sharpening his blade. "Get her to the capital, expose the conspiracy, execute the traitors. In that order." "That's not a plan. That's a wish list." "You have a better idea?" Ryder's jaw tightened. "The capital's been compromised. Half the council's working for the coalition, and the other half's too scared to do anything about it. If we walk straight into that mess, we're dead." "So what do you suggest?" Ashin asked. "We go to the Shadow Ridge Pack. They're neutral, strong enough to shelter us while we regroup." "Shadow Ridge hasn't taken a side in 50 years, Tyven pointed out. "What makes you think they'll help now?" "Because their alpha owes me." Ryder's expression was grim. "And I'm calling in the debt." Ashini exchanged a look with Tyven. "How far?" 3 days, if we push hard." "Can she make it?" One of the twins nodded toward Seren. "I'm sitting right here," Seren said flatly. "And yes, I can make it." Rydor looked at her. "You sure?" "No, but we're doing it anyway." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, we leave at first light." The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Seren leaned back against a rock and closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her like a riptide. The baby kicked, hard enough to make her wince. Rydor's hand covered hers. "You all right?" "Just tired." "Get some rest. I'll keep watch." "You need sleep too." "I'll sleep when you're safe." Seren opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked. At the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand trembled slightly where it touched hers. "You're not alone anymore," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" Ryder's throat worked. "I know." "Then trust the others to help. You can't protect me if you collapse from exhaustion." He was quiet for a moment, then, "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just didn't notice." This time when he smiled, it reached his eyes. Seren let herself lean into him, just a little, just enough to feel solid and warm and there. His arm came around her shoulders automatically, holding her close. And for the first time in months, she let herself believe they might actually survive this. The attack came just before dawn. Seren woke to the sound of steel on steel, a sharp metallic clang that sent her heart slamming into her throat. She scrambled upright, disoriented, reaching for the knife at her belt. The camp was chaos. Figures moved in the pre-dawn gloom, too many to count, all armed, all moving with brutal efficiency. The twins were already engaged, fighting back-to-back against 3 attackers. Ashin had shifted halfway, claws out, blood on her teeth. And Tyven was down. He was on his knees, one hand pressed to his side, blood seeping through his fingers. An assassin stood over him, sword raised. Seren didn't think. She grabbed the nearest weapon, a fallen blade half buried in the dirt, and ran. The assassin saw her coming, turned, brought his sword around in a wide arc meant to cut her in half. Seren dropped low, felt the blade whistle over her head, and drove her own weapon up into his gut. The man's eyes went wide. He staggered back, clutching the wound, and collapsed. Seren grabbed Tyven and hauled him upright. "Can you stand?" "Yeah." His voice was tight with pain. "Behind you?" She spun. Another assassin. Bigger. Faster. He had a dagger in each hand and a smile that made her skin crawl. "The runaway whore," he said. "Vera sends her regards." Seren bared her teeth. "Tell her to come say it herself." The assassin lunged. Seren tried to dodge, wasn't fast enough. The blade grazed her shoulder, tearing through fabric and skin. Pain flared white-hot. She stumbled backward, lost her footing, went down hard. The assassin loomed over her, raising the dagger. And then Ryder was there. He hit the assassin like a freight train, drove him into the ground, and didn't stop. Just kept hitting him, over and over, until there was nothing left but pulp and bone. When he finally stopped, his hands were shaking. He turned to Seren, eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" "It's just a scratch." "Let me see." "Ryder." "Let me see." Seren peeled back the torn fabric. The wound was shallow, painful, but not serious. Ryder's jaw tightened anyway. "I'm fine," she said. "Really?" He didn't look convinced. Around them, the fight was winding down. The twins had finished off their opponents. Ashini was wiping blood from her claws, and Tyvin was sitting against a rock, breathing hard, one hand still pressed to his side. "How bad?" Ryder called. "I'll live," Tyvin grimaced. "But we need to move. If they found us here, there'll be more," Ashin finished. "Agreed. Pack up. We're gone in 5 minutes." They moved like ghosts through the early morning light, leaving the bodies behind. No time to bury them. No time to mourn. Just survival, stripped down to its rawest form. Saren rode beside Rydor, her shoulder throbbing, her mind racing, because now she understood. This wasn't just a conspiracy, it was a war. And she wasn't a bystander anymore. She was the target. The realization settled into Saren's bones like ice water as they rode hard through terrain that grew more unforgiving with every mile. The horse's breath came in white plumes. The wind cut through her cloak and made her wound throb. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, revealing a landscape of jagged rocks and skeletal trees that looked like they'd been clawed out of the earth by something angry. Ryder hadn't spoken since they'd left the bodies behind. He just kept glancing back at her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the ridgeline for threats that hadn't appeared yet but would. They always did. By midday, Tyvin was struggling to stay upright in his saddle. "We need to stop," Ashin said quietly, pulling her horse alongside Rydor's. "He's losing too much blood." "We stop, we die," Ryder said. "He dies anyway if we keep pushing." Ryder's hands tightened on the reins. For a moment, Saren thought he might actually refuse. Then he cursed under his breath and raised a hand. The group slowed to a halt in a narrow ravine flanked by vertical rock walls. Ashin dismounted first, moving to Tyvin's side. The twins fanned out, weapons drawn, eyes on the high ground. Saren slid off her horse and went straight to Tyvin. He was pale, sweating. The makeshift bandage around his torso was soaked through. "Let me see," she said. "I'm fine. You're bleeding out. Let me see." Tyvin grimaced but lifted his shirt. The wound was worse than she'd thought. A deep gash along his ribs, jagged edges, already showing signs of infection. "This needs stitches," Saren said. "And I need to clean it properly or you'll be dead by nightfall." "Great," Tyvin muttered. "Inspirational." Saren pulled her satchel off her horse and dug through it for supplies. Her hands were steadier than they should have been. Muscle memory. Years of patching up wounded wolves in the capital's medical wing, back when her biggest concern was running out of clean bandages. She worked fast, cleaned the wound with alcohol that made Tyvin hiss between his teeth, threaded a needle she'd been saving for emergencies, started stitching. "You're good at this," Tyvin said through gritted teeth. "I've had practice." "Where'd you train?" "The palace. Before everything went to hell." Tyvin was quiet for a moment. Then, "You could have stayed there. Played it safe, pretended none of this was your problem." Saren pulled another stitch tight. "And let them win? Not a chance. Even if it costs you everything?" She met his eyes. "I already lost everything the night he chose her. Now I'm just fighting to get it back." Tyvin studied her face. Then he smiled, faint but genuine. "He's lucky. You know that, right? Tell him that." "I think he knows." Saren finished the last stitch and tied it off. "There. That'll hold until we reach Shadow Ridge, but you need to take it easy." "Sure," Tyvin said. "Right after we survive the next ambush." Optimist. Realist. Ryder appeared at her elbow. "We need to move." "He needs rest." "He can rest when we're behind walls." Ryder's voice was flat, final. "They're tracking us. I can feel it." Saren straightened, wiping blood off her hands. "How close?" "Close enough." She looked past him, scanning the ridgeline. Nothing moved. But the air felt wrong, too still, too quiet. Like the forest was holding its breath. "How long do we have?" Ashin asked. "An hour, maybe less." Ryder turned to the twins. "Kyle, Jory, I need you to double back, slow them down." The twins exchanged a glance. "That's a suicide mission," Jory said. "I know." "We'll do it anyway," Kale said. "But you owe us a drink when this is over." Ryder's expression softened, just for a second. "Deal." They were gone before Saren could argue. The group mounted up again. Tyvin swayed but stayed upright. Ashini took point. Rydor stayed close to Saren, close enough that his leg brushed hers every few steps. "This is insane," Saren said quietly. "I know. We're not going to make it. We will." "How can you be so sure?" Rydor looked at her, really looked. His eyes were bloodshot, shadowed, but there was something unbreakable in them, something that refused to bend. "Because I didn't claw my way out of hell just to lose you again," he said. "So we're going to make it. End of story." Saren wanted to believe him. She really did. But the bond in her chest was screaming danger, and her wolf was pacing like a caged animal, and every instinct she had was telling her they were running out of time. The explosion came from behind them, a deep, thunderous boom that shook the ground and sent birds screaming into the sky. Saren's horse reared. She grabbed the reins, held on, forced it back under control. "What was that?" Ashin shouted. Ryder's face had gone white. "The twins." Another explosion. Closer this time. Then the screaming started. It wasn't human, wasn't wolf. It was something in between, raw and guttural and full of pain. The sound echoed off the rocks, bouncing back and forth until Saren couldn't tell where it was coming from. "They're buying us time," Tyvin said. His voice was hoarse. "We need to use it." "We can't just leave them. We don't have a choice," Tyvin snapped. Then softer. They knew what they were signing up for. Don't make it meaningless. Ryder's jaw worked. Then he spurred his horse forward. They ran, the terrain blurred, rocks, trees, narrow trails that twisted and doubled back on themselves. Saren's shoulder burned. Her thighs ached from gripping the saddle. The baby kicked, hard, insistent, like it could sense her panic. Behind them, the sounds of battle faded, then stopped. The silence was worse. They reached Shadow Ridge territory just as the sun touched the horizon. Saren knew they'd crossed the border because the forest changed. The trees grew taller, thicker, their trunks marked with old claw scars and symbols she didn't recognize. The air smelled different, sharper, like pine and cold stone and something faintly metallic. "We're close," Ryder said. His voice was tight, controlled, but Saren could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. "How do you know they'll let us in?" Ashani asked. "They won't have a choice." That's not reassuring. It's the truth. They rounded a bend and stopped. A wall rose before them. Not stone, not wood, but something in between. Ancient. Organic. Like the forest itself had grown up and twisted into a barrier 30 feet high. Watchtowers jutted from the top, manned by wolves whose eyes glowed amber in the fading light. "State your business," a voice called down. Ryder dismounted, stepped forward. "I'm here to see Alpha Draven. Tell him Ryder Kane is calling in his debt." A long pause, then, "Wait here." They waited. Saren dismounted carefully, legs shaking. She leaned against her horse, trying to catch her breath. Tyvin looked worse, gray-faced, barely conscious. Ashini stayed mounted, watching the walls like she expected arrows to start flying any second. "What debt?" Saren asked quietly. Ryder didn't look at her. "The kind you don't talk about." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Before Saren could press, the gates opened. Not all the way. Just enough for a single figure to step through. He was massive, easily a head taller than Rydor, built like a mountain given human form. His hair was black, streaked with silver, pulled back in a knot. Scars crisscrossed his arms and chest, visible even through the heavy fur cloak he wore. His eyes were the color of old ice. "Rydor," he said. His voice was deep, gravelly. "You look like hell." "Good to see you too, Draven." Draven's gaze swept over the group, lingered on Saren. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "You brought a pregnant woman into my territory," he said, "during a war." "I brought my mate," Ryder corrected. "And yes." Draven was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "You always did have terrible timing." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the gates. "Come on, before I change my mind." The interior of Shadow Ridge was nothing like the capital. Where the King's City was all marble and gold and carefully maintained gardens, this place was raw, functional. Buildings carved directly into cliff faces, connected by rope bridges and narrow staircases. Torches burned in iron sconces. Wolves moved through the shadows. watching, waiting, silent as ghosts. They were led to a large hall built into the side of a mountain. Inside, a fire roared in a pit the size of a wagon. Furs covered the floor. Weapons lined the walls. Draven gestured to the benches near the fire. "Sit, eat. Then you'll tell me why I shouldn't throw you back out into the cold." Seren sank onto a bench, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Food appeared: bread, meat, soup that tasted like heaven. She ate without tasting it, just shoveling fuel into her body because she needed to stay upright. Rydor sat beside her, close, protective. Draven settled across from them, eyes sharp. "Talk." So Rydor did. He explained everything: the conspiracy, the blood magic, Vyra and the Northern Coalition, the assassination attempts, the twins they'd left behind. Draven listened without interrupting. When Rydor finished, the Alpha was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You're asking me to take sides in a war that's been brewing for 50 years, to shelter you while half the kingdom wants you dead, to risk my pack for a woman I've never met and a bond I have no reason to believe is real." "Yes," Rydor said simply. "Why would I do that?" "Because you owe me, and because if the Coalition wins, Shadow Ridge is next. You know it. I know it. This isn't about loyalty. It's about survival." Draven's jaw tightened. "I could kill you right now. Deliver your body to Vyra. Buy myself another decade of peace." Rydor didn't flinch. "You could, but you won't." "Why not?" "Because you're not a coward." The hall went silent. Then Draven smiled, slow, dangerous. "You always were arrogant." He stood. "Fine. You can stay. But if you bring trouble to my door, I'll gut you myself. Clear?" "Crystal." "Good." Draven glanced at Seren. "You look half dead. There's a room upstairs. Use it." He turned and walked out. Rydor exhaled slowly. "That went better than expected." "Better?" Ashin stared at him. "He threatened to kill you." "Yeah, but he didn't actually do it. Progress." Seren wanted to laugh or cry. She wasn't sure which. Instead, she just stood and made her way to the stairs. The room was small, sparse. A bed, a window overlooking the forest, a basin of water. Serene stripped off her bloody clothes and washed as best she could. The wound on her shoulder had stopped bleeding but ached like fire. She bandaged it with shaking hands, then collapsed onto the bed. She was asleep in seconds, and woke to Rydor shaking her. "Get up," he said. His voice was urgent, scared. "Now." Seren sat bolt upright. "What? They're here." Her blood went cold. "How many?" "Too many." Rydor pulled her to her feet, pressed a knife into her hand. "Draven's holding the gates, but they're coming over the walls. We need to move." "Where?" "Anywhere but here." They ran. The halls were chaos. Wolves fighting, blood on the stone, screams echoing off the walls. Seren followed Rydor blindly, trusting him to know where he was going even though she was pretty sure he didn't. They burst out into a courtyard and froze. Vyra stood in the center, surrounded by a dozen Coalition soldiers. Her platinum hair gleamed in the firelight. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "There you are," she said. "I was starting to think you'd run again." Rydor stepped in front of Seren. "This ends now." "Oh, it does," Vyra agreed. "Just not the way you think." She gestured, and the soldiers moved forward. Rydor shifted. So did Seren. It wasn't a choice, wasn't even a conscious decision. Her wolf just surged forward, faster than thought. And suddenly she was on 4 legs with teeth bared and every protective instinct she'd ever had screaming, "Protect the child, protect the pack, protect him." The soldiers hesitated, because Seren's wolf wasn't normal. She was bigger than she should be, faster, and her fur, instead of the typical gray or brown or black, glowed faintly gold, like someone had dipped her in sunlight. Vyra's smile faltered. "What?" Seren didn't give her time to finish. She lunged. The fight was brutal, chaotic. Seren moved on instinct, tearing through soldiers who got too close, staying near Rydor, protecting his flank while he went for Vyra. And then something shifted inside her. Heat exploded in her chest, not painful, but overwhelming. The bond flared white-hot. Her vision blurred, and suddenly light was pouring out of her. Actual light, golden and searing, radiating from her fur in waves. The soldiers closest to her screamed and fell back, clutching their eyes. Seren stood there, panting, staring at her own paws in shock. "What the hell?" "Healer blood," Vera hissed. "You're a god's damned lightborn." Seren didn't know what that meant, but Ryder did. He turned to stare at her, eyes wide. "Seren, I don't understand. Later." He grabbed her scruff, hauled her sideways just as a blade came down where her head had been. "We need to go." They ran again. Out of the courtyard, through the halls, toward the back of the compound where the forest pressed close. Behind them, Vera's voice rang out. "Find her! I want her alive!" "Why alive?" Seren gasped as they burst into the trees. "Because lightborn blood can break any curse," Rydor said grimly, "including the ones holding the coalition together." Seren's stomach dropped. "So I'm not just a target. I'm a weapon." "Yeah. Great. Fantastic. Love that for me." They didn't stop running until they were miles into the forest, lungs burning, legs shaking. Finally, Rydor slowed, shifted back, leaned against a tree, breathing hard. Serene shifted too, stood there naked and shivering and trying to process everything that had just happened. "You knew," she said quietly. "You knew what I was." "I suspected," Ryder admitted. "Your scent? It's different, sweeter. I thought maybe you had healer blood, but I didn't think—" He ran a hand through his hair. "Lightborn are supposed to be extinct." "Apparently not." "Apparently not, he echoed. Seren wrapped her arms around herself. "What does this mean?" "It means you're more dangerous than I thought, and more valuable." Rydor pushed off the tree, came to her, cupped her face in his hands. "It means they'll never stop hunting you, not until you're dead or they are." "Then we'd better make sure they die first." Rydor stared at her. Then, impossibly, he smiled. "I really am the luckiest bastard alive." "Or the dumbest." "Probably both." He kissed her then, hard and desperate and tasting like blood and smoke and survival. Seren kissed him back, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. Fear, rage, love, hope. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "We can't go back to Shadow Ridge," Seren said. "I know. And we can't outrun them forever." "I know that too." "So what do we do?" Ryder's expression hardened. "We stop running. We take the fight to them." "How?" "The capital. We go back. We expose Vyra in front of the entire court. Force the council to choose sides. That's suicide. It's the only play we have left." Seren wanted to argue, but he was right. They were out of options, out of allies, out of time. "All right," she said, "then we do it smart. We do it fast, and we don't die. Deal." They walked through the night, heading south, toward the capital, toward the heart of enemy territory. And with every step, Seren felt the power inside her growing stronger, brighter. Whatever she was, whatever this lightborn thing meant, she was going to use it, because she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Rydor, for their child, for a future that didn't involve running and hiding and waiting for the next blade to fall. Dawn broke cold and gray. They crested a ridge and stopped. Below them, the capital sprawled across the valley, walls and towers and thousands of lights just beginning to wake. And somewhere in that city, Vera was waiting. "Last chance to turn back," Ryder said quietly. Seren took his hand, squeezed once. "Not a chance," she said. They walked down the ridge together, into the light, into the fire, into a war that had been waiting for them all along. The capital's outer districts woke slowly around them. Bakers lighting ovens, street vendors setting up carts, children running through alleys with sticks and laughter. Normal life continuing as if the kingdom wasn't tearing itself apart. Seren pulled her hood lower, keeping her face hidden. Ryder walked beside her, close enough to touch but far enough apart that they didn't draw attention. Just two more travelers in a city full of strangers, except they weren't strangers. Not here. "We need to get word to someone loyal," Ryder said quietly. "Someone who can gather support before we move." "Who's left?" "Lord Merrick. He runs the southern garrison. Never liked Vera, never trusted the coalition. Ryder's jaw tightened. If anyone's still holding the line, it's him. And if he's not, then we improvise. They cut through the market district, weaving between stalls, selling everything from fresh bread to stolen jewelry. The smell of roasted meat made Serene's stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten anything that wasn't dried rations or stale bread. Ryder noticed. He stopped at a cart, bought 2 meat pies with coins Saren didn't know he had, and handed her one without a word. She ate it in 4 bites. It was greasy and too salty and absolutely perfect. Better? He asked. Much. They kept moving. The southern garrison was a squat stone building near the river, marked by crimson banners and guards who looked alert instead of bored. Ryder approached the gate carefully, hands visible, posture non-threatening. "I need to see Lord Merrick," he said. The guard, a young wolf with a scar across his eyebrow, looked him up and down. "He's not taking visitors." "He'll take me." "Name?" Ryder pulled back his hood. The guard's eyes went wide. He stepped back, hand going to his sword. "Your Majesty." "Quietly," Ryder said. "Please." The guard swallowed hard, nodded, disappeared inside. They waited. Serene's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that the guard was going to come back with a dozen soldiers and they'd be dead before they could run. But then the gate opened. Lord Merrick stepped out, a barrel-chested man with gray in his beard and eyes like flint. He took one look at Ryder and cursed. "You stupid, reckless bastard," he said. "You have any idea how many people are looking for you?" "Good to see you too, Merrick." "Don't!" Merrick pointed a finger at him. "Don't you dare charm me right now. You vanished for months, the kingdom's falling apart, and now you show up at my door like nothing's wrong?" "I didn't vanish. I was hunting." "For what?" Ryder glanced at Serene. "Her." Merrick's gaze shifted, really looked at her for the first time. His expression changed. Confusion, then recognition, then something close to shock. "The healer," he said quietly. "The one from the medical wing." Serene lifted her chin. "That's me." Merrick studied her face, her swollen belly, the way Ryder stood close enough to be protective but not possessive. "Well, hell," he said finally. "This just got complicated." "Can we come in?" Ryder asked. Merrick hesitated, then he nodded. "Yeah, but if you get me killed, I'm haunting you." Inside, the garrison was organized chaos. Soldiers moving supplies, maps spread across tables, weapons being sharpened and oiled. Everyone looked tense, ready. Merrick led them to a private room and shut the door. "Talk, fast." Ryder did. He explained the blood magic, the conspiracy. Vera's plan to use Saren's lightborn blood to solidify the coalition's power. The assassination attempts. The fact that half the council was compromised and the other half was too terrified to act. Merrick listened without interrupting. When Ryder finished, the old soldier sat back in his chair and rubbed his face. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that the woman I've been taking orders from for months is a blood mage who mind-controlled you into choosing her as queen." "Yes." "And this woman," he nodded at Saren, "is some kind of ancient magical being that everyone thought was extinct." "Also, yes." "And you want me to help you expose this in front of the entire court?" "That's the plan." Merrick laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "You know what happens to people who accuse the queen of treason without proof? They disappear. Quietly. Permanently." "I have proof," Seren said. Both men turned to look at her. She stood, moved to the center of the room, closed her eyes, reached for the power she'd felt in the courtyard at Shadow Ridge, that golden light that had exploded out of her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It came easier this time. Light bloomed around her hands, soft at first, then brighter, until the entire room was glowing. Not harsh, not blinding, just warm, healing. Right. Merrick stared. "Holy Lightborn," Ryder said quietly. "The blood magic Vera used on me, Saren can break it. She can prove what was done, in front of everyone." Merrick was silent for a long moment. Then he stood. "All right, I'm in. But we do this smart. Vera's got most of the council in her pocket. We need allies, real ones. Who's still loyal? Ryder asked. Lady Karis. She runs the Eastern Territories. Never liked the coalition. And Commander Asheen? Wait, where is she? Shadow Ridge, or dead, I don't know. Ryder's expression darkened. We got separated during the attack. Damn, Merrick paced. All right, we work with what we have. I can rally the southern garrisons, get word to Karis, but you need to stay hidden until we're ready to move. How long? 3 days? Maybe 4? We don't have 4 days, Surin said. Vera knows I'm Lightborn now. She's going to move fast. Then we move faster. Merrick looked at Ryder. There's a safe house near the old temple district. No one uses it anymore. You can hide there. And if someone finds us, then you fight your way out, like always. Ryder almost smiled. You really haven't changed. Neither have you, still making terrible decisions and dragging everyone else into them. It's a gift. It's a curse. But Merrick clasped Ryder's shoulder. Stay alive, Your Majesty. We need you. They left through a side exit, moving quickly through back alleys and forgotten streets. The safe house was exactly what Merrick had promised. A crumbling building wedged between 2 larger structures, easy to miss if you didn't know where to look. Inside it smelled like dust and old stone, but it was dry, defensible, and most importantly, hidden. Surin sank onto a bench near the window, exhaustion crashing over her. The baby kicked, hard, insistent, and she pressed a hand to her belly. You all right? Ryder asked. Tired, scared, ready for this to be over. Soon. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. 3 days, 4 at most. Then we end this. Surin wanted to believe him. She really did. But the bond in her chest was still screaming danger, and her wolf was pacing, and every instinct she had was telling her they were running out of time faster than Merrick thought. What if we don't wait? She said quietly. Ryder frowned. What? What if we don't wait for Merrick to rally support? What if we just do it now? That's suicide. So is hiding and hoping Vera doesn't find us first. Surin turned to face him. Think about it. She's expecting us to run, to hide, to gather allies and come at her with an army. She's prepared for that. And you think she's not prepared for us to walk straight into the palace and call her out? I think she's arrogant enough to believe we wouldn't dare. Surin's mind was racing now, pieces clicking together. The court's gathering tomorrow for the full moon ceremony. Every noble in the kingdom will be there. If we expose her then, in front of everyone, she can't make us disappear quietly. Ryder stared at her. You want to walk into a room full of people who want you dead and bet everything on one moment? Yes. That's insane. It's the only move she won't see coming. He was quiet for a long time. Then he laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Can't I be both? Apparently. He scrubbed a hand over his face. All right, let's say we do this. How? Surin's mind was already working. The ceremony happens at sunset. Everyone gathers in the grand hall. Vera will be on the dais, performing the ritual. That's when we move. She'll have guards. So we don't fight them. We don't give her a chance to make this about violence. Surin's voice grew stronger. I walk in, alone, unarmed, pregnant. I stand in front of the entire court, and I show them what she did to you. The Lightborn magic. It's proof. Irrefutable. And if she kills you before you get the chance, then you make sure everyone knows why. Ryder's jaw tightened. I don't like this. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me. He looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. At the determination in her eyes, the set of her shoulders, the way she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. I do, he said quietly. Trust you, I mean, but I'm still coming with you. Ryder, non-negotiable. His voice was firm, final. You walk in there, I'm right behind you. End of discussion. Surin wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes told her it would be pointless. Fine, she said, but we do it my way. Deal. They spent the rest of the day planning. Ryder sketched a rough map of the grand hall from memory. Entrances, exits, guard positions, where the council sat. Seren studied it until she could see it with her eyes closed. The main entrance is too obvious, Ryder said. They'll stop you before you get 10 feet. What about the servants' corridor, the one behind the kitchens? That leads to the dais. You'd be coming in right next to Vera. Perfect. Perfect? She'll have you killed the second she sees you. Not if I'm faster. Seren tapped the map. I come in during the ritual, when everyone's focused on the ceremony. I step onto the dais. I use the Lightborn light to break whatever spell is holding the court in line. And then I make her confess. Make her? Lightborn magic doesn't just heal, it reveals. Truth, intent, all of it. Seren met his eyes. If I can get close enough, I can force her to tell everyone what she did. Ryder looked skeptical. You've never done this before. No, but I felt it. At Shadow Ridge, the power isn't just about light, it's about exposure. Bringing things into the open. And if you're wrong, then we die. But at least we die fighting. He couldn't argue with that. Night fell. They ate in silence. More dried rations, stale bread, water that tasted faintly metallic. Ryder kept watch while Seren tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind was too loud. Her wolf was too restless. Finally, she gave up and joined him at the window. Can't sleep? He asked. No. Me neither. They stood together, looking out at the city. Lights flickered in windows. Somewhere, music played. Life continuing, oblivious to the storm about to break. I'm scared, Seren admitted quietly. Good. You should be. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. Ryder turned to face her. Fear means you understand what's at stake. It means you're not walking into this blind. And you? Are you scared? Terrified. His smile was thin. But I'm doing it anyway, because you're right. This is the only move that matters. Seren leaned into him. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her close. When this is over, she said, I want a normal life. Just for a little while. No conspiracies. No assassins. Just quiet. Deal. Where do you want to go? Somewhere with trees and a river and absolutely no politics. Ryder laughed softly. I'll build you a cabin, middle of nowhere. Just us and the kid. Kids, Seren corrected. Plural. He froze. What? The healer I saw a few weeks ago said she heard 2 heartbeats. Serene's hand moved to her belly. Twins. Ryder stared at her. Then he laughed, real and surprised and full of something that sounded like joy. Twins? Of course, because one isn't complicated enough. Are you upset? Are you kidding? I'm terrified and thrilled and I have no idea how we're going to manage, but no, I'm not upset. He kissed her forehead. I'm the luckiest bastard alive. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. The next day passed in agonizing slowness. They stayed hidden, stayed quiet. Ryder sharpened his blade. Seren practiced calling the light over and over until it came as naturally as breathing. By the time the sun started to set, she was ready, or as ready as she'd ever be. They moved through the city as darkness fell. The streets were crowded, everyone heading toward the palace for the ceremony. Nobles in formal attire, merchants hoping to catch a glimpse, soldiers maintaining order. Seren and Ryder slipped through the chaos like ghosts. The servants' entrance was guarded by a single wolf, young, bored, more focused on the festivities than his post. Ryder approached from behind, knocked him unconscious with practiced efficiency, and dragged him into the shadows. Sorry, he muttered. They slipped inside. The corridor was narrow and dark, lit only by scattered torches. The sound of voices drifted from the grand hall. Hundreds of people, all gathered for the ceremony. Seren's heart hammered against her ribs. The babies, kicked hard, like they could sense her fear. You ready? Ryder asked. No, but let's do it anyway. They reached the door to the dais. Ryder pressed his ear against it, listening. Then he nodded. She's starting the ritual, now or never. Seren took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and pushed the door open. The grand hall exploded into silence. Every eye turned toward her, hundreds of wolves, all staring, all shocked. Saren walked forward, head high, hands steady. She could feel Ryder behind her, close enough to intervene, but far enough to let her lead. Vera stood on the dais, dressed in ceremonial robes, a silver blade in her hand. Her expression shifted from shock to fury in the space of a heartbeat. "Guards!" she shouted. "Seize her!" Soldiers moved, but Saren was faster. She raised her hands and let the light explode. It poured out of her in waves, golden, brilliant, impossible to ignore. The entire hall lit up like midday sun. People gasped, stumbled back, shielded their eyes. And in that moment, Saren felt the magic reach out. Not just light, truth. It latched onto Vera like a hook. The queen screamed, tried to fight it, but the lightborn magic was stronger. "Tell them," Saren said. Her voice rang through the hall, clear, commanding. "Tell them what you did." Vera's mouth moved against her will, words spilling out in a voice that wasn't quite hers. "Blood magic," she gasped. "I used blood magic to control the king, to make him choose me, to bind his wolf and steal his will." The hall erupted. Shouts, curses, nobles surging to their feet, soldiers drawing weapons, uncertain who to point them at. "Lies!" Vera shrieked. "She's manipulating me! She's the one using magic!" "Then let them see," Saren said. She stepped forward, placed her hand on Ryder's chest, and pushed the light into him. The bond between them flared white-hot, and suddenly everyone in the hall could see it, the golden thread connecting them, the way it pulsed with life and love and something unbreakable. And they could see the scars on it, the places where Vera's magic had tried to sever it, failed, but left marks, proof. The hall went silent. Lord Gavrin stood slowly. His face was pale, shocked. "Your Majesty, is this true?" Ryder's voice was steady. "Every word." "Then the bond is real, always was. Vera tried to destroy it. She failed." Gavrin's gaze shifted to Saren, to her glowing hands, her swollen belly, the light still radiating from her skin. "Lightborn," he whispered. "The old stories were true." "They were," Saren said. "And I'm using that power now to show you the truth. Vera is a traitor. She's been working with the Northern Coalition to destabilize this kingdom, and she'll keep doing it until someone stops her." Vera lunged. She shifted mid-leap, claws out, teeth bared, going straight for Saren's throat. Saren didn't move. Ryder did. He shifted faster than thought, met Vera mid-air, and drove her into the ground. They hit hard enough to crack stone. Vera snarled, twisted, tried to get leverage. Ryder's jaws closed around her throat. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to hold. The hall was dead silent. "It's over," Ryder said, shifting back just enough to speak. "Stand down, or I end this now." Vera's eyes burned with hate, but slowly she shifted back, raised her hands in surrender. Guards moved in, grabbed her, hauled her upright, and just like that, it was done. Saren's legs gave out. Ryder caught her before she hit the ground, holding her close. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it," she corrected. Around them, the hall erupted into chaos. Nobles shouting questions, soldiers securing Vera, Merrick pushing through the crowd, looking equal parts relieved and furious. But Saren barely noticed, because the bond in her chest was finally quiet. Not gone, not weak, just at peace. Gavrin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Lady Saren, the council will need to convene. There are questions, protocols." "Tomorrow," Ryder said firmly. "Tonight, we rest." "But tomorrow?" Gavrin hesitated. Then he bowed. "Of course, Your Majesty." Ryder lifted Saren into his arms, ignoring her protests, and carried her out of the hall. The crowd parted for them, silent, respectful. And for the first time in months, Saren let herself believe they might actually survive this. Ryder carried her through corridors she'd once walked as a servant, past the medical wing where she'd spent years mixing salves and stitching wounds, past the council chambers where decisions about her life had been made without her presence, past the grand staircase she'd scrubbed on her hands and knees when she first arrived at the palace as a girl with nothing. Everything looked different now, smaller somehow, less intimidating. Or maybe she was just different. He didn't take her to the royal chambers. Instead, He carried her to a room in the east wing, smaller, quieter, with windows overlooking the gardens instead of the city. A place that felt less like a gilded cage and more like a home. "This was my mother's room," he said quietly, setting her down on the bed. "Before she died. I used to come here when I needed to think." Seren looked around. Simple furniture, faded tapestries, books stacked on shelves. "It's perfect." "Yeah." Ryder's expression softened. "I thought you might like it." A knock at the door interrupted them. Merrick stood in the hallway, looking exhausted and deeply annoyed. "The council's losing their minds. Half of them want to execute Vera immediately. The other half want a formal trial. And everyone wants to know what the hell a Lightborn is and why nobody told them one existed." "Tomorrow," Ryder said again. "Your Majesty." "I said tomorrow, Merrick. Give us one night, please." The old soldier studied Ryder's face. Then he sighed. "Fine. One night. But at dawn, you're dealing with this mess. No arguments." "Agreed." Merrick left, muttering under his breath about stubborn kings and impossible situations. Ryder shut the door and leaned against it, closing his eyes. For a moment, he looked less like a king and more like a man who'd been running too long and too hard and finally had permission to stop. "You should rest," Seren said. "So should you." "I will. In a minute." He opened his eyes. "What do you need?" "Answers." Seren sat up straighter, ignoring the way her back protested. "What happens now? To Vera? To the Coalition? To us?" Ryder crossed to the window, staring out at the darkened gardens. "Vera will stand trial. The evidence is overwhelming. Blood magic, treason, attempted murder. The council will have no choice but to execute her. And the Coalition? Harder. They're powerful, connected. Taking down Vera doesn't dismantle the whole network." He turned to face her. "But it's a start. And with you, with what you can do, we have leverage we didn't have before, like..." Seren's hand moved to her belly. "I'm not a weapon." "I know, but they don't." Ryder's voice was gentle. "The Lightborn are legend. People feared them, revered them. If they think you're on our side, it changes the game. And if I don't want to be part of the game, then you don't have to be." He crossed to her, knelt beside the bed so they were eye level. "I'm not asking you to fight for the kingdom. I'm asking if you'll fight for us. For this." He placed his hand over hers, over their children. "Everything else is negotiable." Seren looked at him, really looked. At the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he was trying so hard to give her a choice when he'd been denied one for months. "I'll fight," she said quietly, "but on my terms. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not pretending to be small or quiet or forgettable. If I'm going to be queen, you are queen. Then I'm doing it my way. The council gets to deal with that or find another king." Ryder's smile was slow and real and utterly devastating. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Seren's breath caught. "You... what?" "I love you." He said it again, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "I've loved you since the night you yelled at me for skipping meals and told me even kings need to eat. I loved you when you ran. I loved you when I couldn't remember why. And I love you now, sitting here, telling the entire kingdom to deal with it or get out." Seren's throat tightened. "You're terrible at timing." "I know. We just survived an assassination attempt and exposed a conspiracy. I know that too. And I'm 7 months pregnant with twins and probably smell like sweat and terror." "Still love you." Seren laughed, wet and shaky and real. "You're an idiot." "Probably." He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. "But I'm your idiot." "Yeah," she whispered. "You are." They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing, just being. Then Seren pulled back. "I love you too, for the record." "Good," Ryder said, "because otherwise this would be really awkward." She shoved his shoulder. He caught her hand, brought it to his lips, kissed her knuckles. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Seren let herself feel safe. Dawn came too quickly. Seren woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of voices in the corridor outside. Ryder was already awake, dressed in formal attire, standing by the door looking like he was preparing for battle. "Council?" she asked, sitting up. "Yep." "How bad?" "On a scale of 1 to 10? About a 15? Seren groaned. Great. You don't have to come. I can handle it. Not a chance. She swung her legs out of bed, ignoring the protest from her back and hips. We do this together. Seren said, Together, Rydor. That's not negotiable. He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he just sighed and helped her stand. You're stubborn. You love it. I really do. They walked to the council chambers side by side. The room was packed. Every noble who'd been at the ceremony last night, plus a dozen more who'd ridden through the night to be here. The air smelled like tension and old wood and something faintly metallic that made Seren's wolf growl. Lord Gavrin sat at the head of the table, looking older than he had yesterday. Lady Karis was there too, a sharp-eyed woman with iron-gray hair and a reputation for being impossible to intimidate. Merrick stood near the back, arms crossed, expression neutral, and in the corner, surrounded by guards, was Vera. She looked smaller somehow, less polished. Her platinum hair was tangled, her ceremonial robes were gone, replaced by plain gray clothes, but her eyes still burned with hate. Your Majesty, Gavrin said, standing. Lady Seren, please sit. Rydor ignored the offered chair, stood instead at the head of the table, hand resting lightly on the back of Serene's chair as she sat. Let's get this over with, he said. Gavrin nodded. The council has reviewed the evidence presented last night. The use of blood magic, the conspiracy with the Northern Coalition, the attempted murder of Lady Seren. He paused. The charges are clear. The punishment is execution. Vera laughed, sharp, bitter. You think killing me solves anything? The coalition is bigger than one person, stronger. We've been planning this for decades. You cut off one head, 3 more grow back. Then we'll cut off those too, Ryder said flatly. Will you? Vera's smile was vicious. You're a king without an heir, a kingdom divided. Half your nobles are already working for us, and you don't even know which ones. Kill me, and you prove we're a threat. Prove we have power. Prove we're worth fearing. She has a point, Lady Karis said quietly. Ryder's jaw tightened. What are you suggesting? A public trial. Full transparency. Let the kingdom see what she did. Make it clear that blood magic has no place here. Then execute her. Karis's voice was cold, efficient. Turn her into an example, not a martyr. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Seren spoke for the first time. And the coalition nobles? The ones still in the council? Silence. Gavrin shifted uncomfortably. We have suspicions, but no proof. So use me, Seren said. Every eye turned toward her. The Lightborn magic doesn't just heal, it reveals truth, intent. She stood slowly, meeting each council member's gaze in turn. Let me examine every noble in this room. Anyone working with the coalition, anyone compromised by blood magic or bribery or blackmail, I'll know. I'll see it. The room exploded. Absolutely not, someone shouted. That's an invasion of privacy. You can't force us to submit to magical examination, Seren let them yell. Then she raised her hand and golden light bloomed around her fingers. The room went silent. I'm not forcing anyone, she said calmly, but anyone who refuses will be dismissed from the council, permanently, because if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. And if we don't agree to this, an older noble demanded. Ryder's voice was ice. Then you're dismissed anyway. Your choice. The silence stretched. Then Lady Karis stood. I'll submit. Examine me first. Seren crossed to her, placed her hand on Karis's shoulder. Let the light flow. It was easier this time, almost natural. The magic spread through Karis like water finding cracks, searching, testing, revealing. Seren saw fragments, memories, decisions. Nothing dark, nothing corrupted. Just a woman trying to hold her territory together during a war she didn't ask for. She's clean, Seren said, stepping back. Karis nodded once. Your turn, Gavrin. The old advisor hesitated. Then he stood and approached. Seren examined him. Saw loyalty, fear, decades of service, a few questionable decisions made under pressure, but no betrayal, no blood magic. Clean, she said again. One by one, the nobles submitted. Most were clean. A few showed signs of magical influence, faint traces, like fingerprints on glass. Seren pointed them out, and Rydor had them removed from the chamber. 3 nobles refused outright. "Strip their titles," Ryder said. "Seize their lands. Escort them out." Guards moved in. The nobles protested, shouted, threatened. It didn't matter. By the time the sun reached its peak, the council had been cut in half. The remaining nobles looked shaken, scared, but also relieved. "This is just the beginning," Ryder said quietly. "The coalition won't stop. They'll regroup, adapt, come at us from new angles." "Then we adapt too," Merrick said. "Rebuild the council, strengthen the borders, root out every last traitor." "Agreed." Ryder looked at Seren. "And we make sure everyone knows what happens when you threaten this kingdom." Vera's trial happened 3 days later. They held it in the Grand Hall, with every remaining noble and half the city packed into the space. Seren sat on the dais beside Ryder, visible to everyone, her light-born magic on full display. The evidence was presented. Witness after witness testified. The blood magic artifacts were shown, vials of dark liquid, carved stones that pulsed with sickly light, documents detailing the conspiracy. Vera didn't deny it, didn't beg, just sat there with her chin high and her eyes burning. When it came time for sentencing, Gavrin stood. "Lady Vera Thorne," he said, voice echoing through the hall, "you are found guilty of treason, blood magic, and attempted murder. The sentence is death. Do you have any final words?" Vera smiled. "This kingdom is dying. You're just too blind to see it." "Then we'll die fighting," Ryder said, "which is more than you'll do." The execution was swift, clean, over in seconds. Seren didn't watch, just stared at her hands and tried not to think about how easy it would be to become what Vera had been, powerful, ruthless, willing to do anything to win. After, they burned the body, scattered the ashes, erased every trace of her existence. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like survival. The weeks that followed were a blur, rebuilding the council, negotiating with the territories, sending envoys to neighboring kingdoms to reassure them the throne was stable. Seren attended every meeting, sat through every negotiation, learned the language of politics and power. She hated most of it, but she was good at it, better than she expected, because she didn't play the game the way everyone else did. She didn't manipulate or scheme or hide her intentions. She just told the truth, bluntly, repeatedly, until people either accepted it or left. "You're terrifying," Merrick told her one afternoon. "You know that, right?" Seren looked up from the stack of trade agreements she was reviewing. "What?" "Half the council's afraid of you. The other half's in love with you. It's impressive." "I'm not trying to be scary." "That's what makes it worse." Merrick grinned. "Keep it up. The kingdom needs someone who doesn't give a damn about tradition." Rydor agreed. "You're changing things," he said one night. They were in the gardens, walking slowly under the stars. Seren's belly had grown so large she could barely see her feet. "People are listening to you, respecting you, not because you're my mate, because you're you. I'm just doing what makes sense." "Exactly." He stopped, turned to face her. "You're not trying to be like the queens who came before. You're creating something new, something better." Seren looked up at him. "You really believe that?" "I do." She wanted to believe it too, but the fear was still there, buried deep. The voice that whispered she was still just a nameless healer pretending to be something more. As if reading her mind, Ryder said, "You're not pretending, you never were." "How do you know?" "Because pretenders break under pressure. You didn't, you got stronger." Seren's throat tightened. "I'm scared I'll mess this up, that I'll make the wrong call and people will die because of it." "Then you'll be like every other leader in history." Ryder's smile was gentle. "We're all scared, Seren. We just keep moving anyway." She leaned into him, letting his warmth anchor her. "When did you get so wise?" "I didn't. I just listened to smart people. Like you." Flatterer. "It's the truth." The bond between them hummed, steady, unbreakable, real. The twins arrived on a night when the moon was full and the air smelled like rain. Seren had been in a council meeting when the first contraction hit. She'd gripped the table, breathed through it, and finished her sentence before anyone noticed. The second contraction came 10 minutes later. Ryder noticed that one. Meeting's over, he announced, standing. Get out. Your Majesty, we haven't finished. I don't care. Out. Now. The council fled. Ryder helped Saren to her feet, hands steady even though his eyes were wild. Hospital wing? No. Saren shook her head. The room. Your mother's room. Are you sure? Very. He didn't argue. The labor was long, painful, messier than Saren expected, and somehow still not as bad as she'd feared. The palace healers attended her, but she barely noticed them, just focused on breathing, on pushing, on Ryder's hand gripping hers so hard she thought her bones might break. The first baby came just before dawn, a girl with dark hair and lungs like a battle cry. The second came 10 minutes later, a boy, quieter, but with eyes that glowed faintly gold even before they opened. Twins, the healer said, smiling. Healthy, perfect. Saren held them both, one in each arm, and felt something settle in her chest. Not the bond, not the magic, just rightness. Ryder sat beside her on the bed, staring at the babies like he couldn't quite believe they were real. They're ours, Saren whispered. Yeah. His voice cracked. They really are. What do we name them? Ryder was quiet for a moment, then Lyra, for the girl, after my mother. And the boy? Your choice. Saren looked down at the tiny face, the golden eyes, the way he already seemed to be studying her. Kael, like the twin who saved us. Kael, Ryder repeated. I like it. Lyra and Kael, their children, their future. Proof that something good could survive the fire. The formal bonding ceremony happened 3 weeks later, not because protocol demanded it, not because the council insisted, but because Saren wanted it, wanted to stand in front of the kingdom and choose Ryder the way he'd been denied the chance to choose her. They held it in the grand hall at sunset, the same place Vera had tried to steal everything, the same place Saren had exposed the truth. Now it was being reclaimed. The hall was packed, every noble, every soldier, hundreds of common wolves who'd come to witness history. Saren wore a simple white dress, no jewels, no embroidery, nothing that screamed royalty, just clean lines and honest fabric. Her hair was loose, her feet were bare. Ryder wore black, his expression serious as he waited on the dais. Gavin officiated, but his words were just background noise. Saren walked down the aisle slowly, holding Lyra while Ryder held Kael. The bond between them pulsed with every step, gold and unbreakable, and singing with joy. When she reached the dais, Ryder handed Kael to Merrick and took both her hands. I choose you, he said. Not a ritual phrase, just truth. Not because I have to, because I want to. Because you're the strongest, bravest, most stubborn person I've ever met, and I can't imagine ruling without you. Saren smiled. I choose you too. Because you never gave up, because you fought your way back to me, because you're worth fighting for. The bond flared bright enough to light the entire hall. Gavin cleared his throat. By the old laws and the new, I declare this bond recognized. King Ryder Kane and Queen Saren Kane. May their rule be long and their line unbroken. The hall erupted into cheers. Saren barely heard it, just stood there with Ryder's hands in hers, the babies sleeping peacefully nearby, the bond finally completely whole. Later, after the feast, after the speeches, after the endless parade of nobles offering congratulations, Saren and Ryder escaped to the gardens. It was quiet here, peaceful. The moon hung low and full, casting silver light over everything. Do you ever regret it? Saren asked. Choosing me. All the chaos that came with it. Ryder looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Are you serious? I'm just saying. No. He turned to face her fully. Not once. Not for a second. You gave me everything, Saren. A real bond, a family, a reason to keep fighting. His smile was soft. You turned me from a king into something better, a partner. Saren's eyes burned. You turned me from nothing into a queen. You were always a queen. You just needed a crown to make it official. She laughed, wet and shaky, and pulled him into a kiss. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. What do you want to do now? Now? Yeah. The war's over. The council's stable. The kingdom's healing. What do you want? Seren thought about it, about the cabin he'd promised, the quiet life, the chance to just be. I want to build something, she said. Not just survive. Build. A kingdom where healers have power, where nameless people get heard, where bonds are sacred and protected. That's ambitious. You asked, Ryder grinned. Then let's build it. Together. Together, Seren agreed. Above them, the moon shone bright and full. The bond between them hummed, and somewhere in the palace, their children slept peacefully, wrapped in blankets and dreams and the promise of a better future. Seren had started as nothing, a nameless healer with no power, no voice, no place. Now she stood in the gardens of the royal palace, hand in hand with a king who loved her, mother to children who would change everything, queen of a kingdom she'd helped save. Not through bloodline, not through manipulation, through courage, through sacrifice, through love that refused to break. The kingdom whispered her story, the runaway who became a queen, the forgotten who became unbreakable. And when historians wrote about this era, decades later, when the wounds had healed and the scars had faded, they wouldn't remember the conspiracies or the battles. They'd remember her. The queen who proved that power didn't come from crowns or bloodlines or ancient magic. It came from choosing to stand when everyone expected you to fall, from loving when it would be easier to hate, from fighting for truth even when lies were safer. Seren Kane, the Lightborn Queen, the woman who'd survived betrayal, war, and separation, and emerged not bitter, not broken, but stronger than anyone thought possible. And as she stood there in the moonlight with Rydor's hand in hers and their future sleeping peacefully inside the palace walls, she finally understood what she'd been fighting for all along. Not survival, not revenge, not even justice, just this. A chance to build something beautiful from the ashes. A chance to prove that love, real, messy, imperfect love, was worth every scar. A chance to show the world that queens weren't born. They were forged in fire, and she'd been burning all along.